Right, okay. I'm going to take some time out of streaming and playing Pokemon Go to just spend a few minutes talking about something I've seen a lot on the internet in the last few months and something I feel like I just need to, put across a bit of a different view to it because it's something I don't necessarily agree with to a large degree, and that is a lot of the community on Reddit and discussion going on around popular YouTube's videos where people are saying the MMORPG genre is dying when I kind of, sigh a bit at that because it reminds me of a few weeks ago when I went to a metal night down the local pub, and the DJ was playing lots of old Metallica, Slipknot, Linkin Park, and System of a Down's Toxicity album, When Angels Deserve to Die. And I think to myself, God, I grew up listening to this music over and over again. There has been decent metal and rock music that's came out in the last 15 years, and I felt like going up to the DJ and saying that. But, I didn't want to be that guy. Um, and, it's easy to think, uh, you know, decent rock and metal music hasn't came out in the last 15 years if you don't actually spend time to actually dig beneath all the mainstream uh, garbage, in inverted commas, stuff you come across in the charts. You actually spend a bit of time digging through Spotify's Discovery channel and the playlist they have on there for rock and metal to actually find actually in only a few minutes you can probably find at least one or two bands that you could get really into that actually, oh my god, released a metal song recently. I mean, a good example is the Architects album that came out this year, one of the best metal albums I've heard in a long time. um, and the same applies to any form of media, be it music, books, or in this case, video games. Specifically with MMORPGs, people keep playing these very big mainstream MMORPGs created by big developers who are creating these games to appeal to as many people as possible. And then people are getting hyped up about these games, keep buying them, keep getting hyped up about them, and then complain that the MMORPG genre is dying because it's not as immersive or there's not as much you can do in it compared to games of a bygone era, such as Lineage, Ultima Online, and RuneScape. Um, and the same applies here. All you have to do is just dig a bit deeper and support, the underdog a bit, and you'll see a rise in better games and discover actually there are good MMORPGs out there that will tick a lot of the boxes into what you're into. Um, and if you keep getting hyped up about MMORPGs, specifically the theme park type MMO game, and I'm not talking about Roller Coaster Tycoon here. I'm talking about games where you level up solely by killing mobs and doing one pre-made dungeon after the other, like you're on right going through rides on a theme park where you're going on one ride, coming off, then going on the next. So people are playing games that are basically diluted versions of World of Warcraft over and over again, and expecting them to be immersive. But it's like, but you're playing a theme park MMO. It's only going to be one that's a shadow of World of Warcraft. So why keep playing theme park MMOs um, and then expect them to be what you remembered them to be like in 10, 15 years ago? And it reminds me of A funny quote, actually. I'll just bring it up here. Insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, which is exactly what a lot of players seem to be doing. They get hyped up about games such as Blade and Soul, ones lately like that. Riders of Icarus, a good example. uh, and some ones that came out quite a few years ago, but were basically of the same ilk back then that people got hyped up about, things like Rift and games like Firefall. All these games people are playing and then thinking, oh, it's not innovating, um, when really you just have to look in the right places. I mean, admittedly, the game that got me hyped up the most and I thought was going to break out of that mode was Black Desert, because it broke out of that theme park MMO concept. It was it touted itself to be a sandbox MMO, but what it ended up doing was it ended up being a sandbox MMO, but it left out a lot of the other gameplay features that you'd typically expect from an MMORPG. Things like PvE dungeons. So in Black Desert, instead of having dungeons to explore and do with your friends, there it's mobs stood still in a field waiting to be attacked, and there's no trading in between players. The economy is very restricted, so there's no true player created economy. And obviously now with the publishers making the game pretty pay to win, it's a game that ended up having the most potential and dying off within 6 months of it being released in the West, which is pretty staggering. I thought it might last at least a year or two, the game, or potentially 5, 10 years, because as with a lot of people, I got sold into the hype. But with the release of the monthly sub thing, it's managed to kill itself off easily within the year. I mean, that's what I think uh, on that. I mean, there are lots of good theme park MMOs out there. There's the ones that I do recommend if you want something similar to World of Warcraft, uh, you know, but with a different kind of environment and a different community and some different, slightly different mechanics and a different story. I mean, there's good ones out there like ones we all know like Final Fantasy 14, Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2. I mean, those are the best, you know, tab targeted based MMORPGs I can recommend out there that generally fall within the theme park MMO type. And if you're more into the action combat side of things, which is what I'm into, the games out there like Terra, which ends up being kind of a casual grind fest. So after 30 hours and not dying once in Terra, I just thought I'm done with this. I didn't even lose half my health on any of the mobs. Like, why am I doing this? But the one that was action based and I did find to get, challenging about 15, 20 hours in was Vindictus, which is basically like kind of a action combat based medieval version of Destiny. It's just dungeon running, basically using lots of action combat. And after each dungeon instance, you meet back in town to, craft some items, potions, maybe the odd bit of armor, which is pointless because you can buy decent stuff with, not a lot of gold. And then you just run and do the next dungeon, and it's all instance based. I mean, those games are fine if you're not expecting the whole massive sandbox open world game going on. I mean, and moving on to that, um, when it comes to an MMO, I always say, the perfect MMO for me would be the atmosphere and combat and fluid animations of Dark Souls, but put into an open world MMORPG. And even though technology is really good at the moment in terms of being able to do a game like Black Desert, I don't think it's quite there yet to do an open world sandbox scale version of an MMO with Dark Souls combat, combat that's as in depth as that, with very balanced items and very fluid combat animation. But we're getting there. I mean, now moving on from that, if you're the type of person that keeps playing MMO after MMO and keep being disappointed, there's still there's still dozens of games out there I can recommend if you're, you know, harking back to the days of immersion from the likes of RuneScape and Ultima Online. And I'd like to just go through some of them that exist now. That some are, fully complete and have been out for years. Other ones are in early access but still have plenty of combat. And I'd just like to go through them now and explain a bit for each one, just to, try and convince some of you people out there that the MMORPG genre isn't dying. So one of the first ones that I really love is Project Gorgon, and I'll just start playing it there. This game is tab targeted, but it has quite a complex, ability system where you can have lots of different abilities. Your character can be customized quite a bit, and the quests are actually a lot more in depth than your typical fetch quest or go and kill so and so or go and save my pet rabbit and bring him back. Those type of things. Project Gorgon actually has quests that will make you think about what you're doing. Puzzle quests, basically, or even some where you come across a guy and he asks you a few maths questions, and if you answer them, he'll give you a couple items. Not, crazy ass maths questions you'll have to Google, but ones that just take a bit of thought, and after a minute or two, you'll work out the answer to if you have any basic knowledge of maths. And this Project Gorgon is actually challenging. It's the type of game where if you run around and you just run into a mob of enemies, you will die. You have to take it slow and understand the limits of, if you're going to try and fight more than 1, 2, or 3 mobs in this game, you will die. And if you want to start doing dungeons with a lot of mobs multiple mobs, you're going to need teamwork. And this is what an MMO RPG should be, for me personally, not something like Black Desert where all the classes look different, all their attacks look different, but you're basically all dealing various rates of DPS, just with different animations, because in Black Desert there's no healing class, there's not really a tank. And that's why everyone says Black Desert is pretty much an MMORPG that it might as well be a single player game, because no one has an excuse or reason to talk to each other, because you can grind everything to your heart's content and play it on your own. And apart from the odd world boss, you don't actually need anyone to help you in that game. And I'm always up for MMORPGs that enhance your experience if you decide to play in a group. There's some MMORPGs that totally make you rely on groups, which I find just as fun, but some people will find, a turn off. Games like Life is Feudal, I love that game. I'm waiting for the MMO version of that to come out, because at the moment you have just lots of mostly player created servers that can only have up to 64 people. But if they manage to pull off the MMO of that, Life is Feudal will end up being one of my favorite MMOs. Life is Feudal, medieval based, has base building in it, terraforming, and the combat is action based. It's a bit clunky, but it's probably the best I've seen out there for an MMO at the moment. And granted, there's issues that people will bring up with these games I'm talking about now. typically with a lot of these games I'm about to, touch on a bit, is most people moan about the graphics, but it's crazy. It's like Project Gorgon, as you can see here, does not look bad. Uh, so you've got a group of people that moan about graphics, and it's like, well, if you care about graphics, then just play Black Desert. And then you've got the people that moan about lack of immersion and lack of unique quests and interaction with community and sandbox features. And then those, why aren't they playing these games? Why aren't they playing it? Because the only downside of a lot of these games like Project Gorgon is the lack of community. If just more people stopped jumping on the hype trains of games like Riders of Icarus, when if you just read the text on the box, it would you'd know it's a theme park MMO and something you should just avoid because it's just going to be another clone of the other theme park MMO that came out the day before, literally. Um, so Project Gorgon is one that I, heavily recommend and people should get on board with. And if you want amazing graphics, fine, just ignore this game. If you're that much of a graphics whore, then go back to Terra and Black Desert. So I mean, my favorite MMO lately that I've put about 500 hours into is Mortal Online, and one that I think doesn't get the recognition it deserves. It's yes, is it's got its flaws. I mean, its flaws are it can be clunky and a bit laggy generally, because it's one world on a server trying to letting everyone from all over the real world play on it. So if you're in America playing against a Russian, combat can be pretty tedious and you're probably just going to get lag killed. But the core foundations of this game and the concepts they're trying to get across are about as perfect as it can be for a sandbox MMO. It's action-based combat, um, where a lot of it is based on skill. I would Once you get moderate or better armor, you can take on pretty much anyone in this game if you have enough skill. Um, and this is one of those other games where people go, "Ah, well, the graphics are rubbish," and it's like, seriously, like, what do you expect the graphics to be like? Like the games like this are 10 times more immersive, and you don't need graphics to be immersive. Um, I mean, this game has a few annoying bugs, but its core concepts are there when it comes to sandbox. You don't have to fight a single person and you can become the richest person in the land. See, there's a bug there with a bloody horse. There's a few lag server related bugs that would cause like crazy ass stuff like that. But you can become the richest person in the world just by crafting armor and selling it on the true player created economy. Um, or sit there fishing and become the richest person. It's got, you know, proper base building in it, not the type of base building where you look at a floor and all of a sudden cubes start appearing. The type of base building where you need someone leveled up to be a builder and they sit there for a few minutes actually building the wall. And once you've built a castle, once you've built your walls and a building inside, it won't be destroyed anytime soon because it actually takes a bit of strategy and players grouping to build things like um, boulder throwers to actually take the walls down. It does take a group effort to do that, so it's not something that happens often. And it's got proper dungeons in it where, as a group, you can go down there and kill mobs and sell their loot and pick up gold. And eventually get to one or two bosses in each of these dungeons that actually take a group of people to work together and talk together to take them down. A legitimate downside to this game, apart from some of the bugs, is not a downside, but ones that will put people off, is there's no dungeons in this game that can be done as a solo person, which is one thing I think it's missing. Because I feel like in Mortal, unless you make a big effort to make friends in the game and join a guild, or just play with friends to do things, you are quite severely restricted in what you can do, because you can leave the town walls and be killed straight away, and lose all your stuff. And as usual in the Steam reviews, people go, "Oh, I did this for 20 hours, died, and lost 20 hours of progress." And it's like, yeah, you lose what's on you, but there's a bank, and one of the golden rules of our hardcore loot dropping MMO is you don't carry stuff on you you can't afford to lose. But this game truly has things in it that will keep you playing for hundreds of hours to get anywhere. And even though it's got a lot of longevity in it, so like it would take a few hundred hours to get used to the game and explore and eventually get some of the rarer stuff like certain crafting books and mage books, it's also at the same time not grindy, because you can max a character's stats out in probably 20-30 hours, and once that character's maxed, you can do what you want in the world with him. It's not a game where you keep grinding and grinding just to get stronger and stronger. Within 20 or 30 hours, when you know what you're doing, you can max a character out, and then it's all just down to skill, to a large degree. And once you're in a guild that can give you half decent armor, then you're good to go, and the grinding's not there. And even the grinding at the beginning isn't terrible, because if you're with a group of people or in a guild, then you're hanging out chatting to them, and you're traveling, and you can do plenty of stuff and gain a bit of money by killing animals and selling their carcasses. You can do that all while you're leveling up your stats. Similar to Life is Feudal. People say, Life is Feudal is a bloody progress bar simulator, but because for the first 20 or 30 hours you're just hacking at a tree for logs. But if you're playing that with one or two friends, then that's something you do as a group and just chill out doing. And then once you've got past that initial few hours, you never have to do that again for the server you play on. So people will moan about that type of grinding, but then don't moan about the eternal grind in Blade of Soul, or they just deal with it. Or the fact it actually takes a lot longer to max a character out in most theme park MMOs. And when games, sandbox games like Life is Feudal and Mortal Online, and once you've maxed out a character in a short amount of time, compared to most MMOs, you're free to do what you want and enjoy the game. So that's, this game's been out for several years, and one I thoroughly enjoy, and one that should have a lot more people playing it, if they're not getting duped into buying a fake instance-based sandbox MMO like Black Desert. And the reason why I say Black Desert's instance-based is because have you seen the housing system? It's just crazy, and not what I expected when I jumped on the hype bandwagon of it. Right, so other games I can recommend that have been out for a while, and have a lot of content in. If you want to get into other games that get away from the whole theme park MMO thing that a lot of people seem to be saying is bad when it is, but there's still plenty of other types of games out there. Other ones I can recommend are Gloria Victis, another medieval MMO. kind of a third-person, slightly better graphical version of Mortal Online. Not as hardcore, but as plenty of content to keep you going for now, even though it's in early access. Um, uh, and another one is Albion Online. If you're not so bothered about having the combat action based, Albion Online is a good way to get play a modern version of a game that will remind you heavily of RuneScape, and requires groups of people to do dungeons and has a lot of crafting in it, and it has a nice open world. So those are games that are there now, innovating, and ones that aren't simply another WoW clone. And there's plenty of other games coming out in the future that make me believe the genre isn't dying. We just need to be playing the right games and be following the right games and getting hyped up about the right games. Um, and that one of these is Chronicles of Elyria. I think I'm pronouncing that right. So this one here, I'm getting full on hyped up about. So there we go. Another one that could be. So for me, Mortal Online is kind of the top of the crop when it comes to sandbox MMOs, in terms of what it's trying to achieve, even though the execution's a bit flaky. But this game here, Chronicles of Elyria, looks like it could be the game to be the best one if you're into sandbox MMOs. The graphics look amazing. The combat in it is realistic and skill based, and it has crafting features in it, and all those other sandbox features you'd expect to progress in the game, explore it, and create your own stories. Another game I've only just come across recently, but is in the. It reminds me a bit of Black Desert, but maybe a bit more mature, but not quite as sandboxy. But the combat does look a lot more interesting. Is a game called Bless Online. Just playing a couple seconds of footage here. So, and this one has mounts you can ride. The combat definitely looks a lot more interesting. I'll just see if I can find the combat. So it has things in it like the Holy Trinity concept, where unlike in Black Desert where everyone just does various looking types of DPS, this game does have a healing class, and a tank class and things like that that will encourage teamwork. So there you are, riding on a dragon. Great stuff. I'm not sure if having flying mounts is a good thing, because it sometimes can create a bit of a disconnect in the community where everyone just ends up ignoring each other because they're flying from one place to the next. And another game that looks to be something innovating beyond your usual WoW clone is one called Shards Online. So this does actually remind me a bit of Albion Online, but one that hopefully won't rely so much on having to be in a group of people just to do some of the dungeons. And it does remind me a lot of RuneScape. I mean, those are the games I generally recommend keeping an eye out for. I went through games that are out there now that I recommend you should play, and I've recommended what I think are the best theme park MMOs if you want to bother with that type of game still. So when it comes to, is the MMORPG genre dying, I would say when it comes to theme park MMOs, yes. When it just comes to MMORPGs in general, I'd have to disagree, because there's plenty of ones out there. You just have to dig a bit for them. Okay, that was my little rant there, mini rant, even though I don't know how long that went on for. Whoa, half an hour. Can't believe it. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Love you and leave you. leave a comment with what you think about whether the MMORPG genre is dying, and if you got any other games you can recommend that actually aren't just another WoW clone, then feel free to drop a comment. Over and out.